In May 1945, the Thousand-Year Reich collapsed into ashes, leaving behind a continent completely shattered by the most destructive conflict in human history. The Germans called it Stunde Null, Hour Zero. The war was over, but the suffering had merely changed its shape. Germany was no longer a functioning nation. It was a sprawling, apocalyptic graveyard of crushed concrete, twisted steel, and starving millions. The transportation network was obliterated. The farms were destroyed. The currency was worthless. And as the surviving civilians crawled out of their cellars and bomb shelters, they faced an immediate, terrifying reality. There was no food. The United States Army, arriving as conquerors, found themselves occupying a wasteland. The average caloric intake for a German civilian plummeted to catastrophic levels, often less than 1,000 calories a day, a fraction of what is required to sustain human life. People boiled weeds, ate tree bark, and scavenged through the garbage pits behind American mess halls just to survive another day. But the official stance of the Allied governments toward this suffering was chillingly clear. It is their own fault. Let them feel the consequences. The official doctrine governing the American occupation of Germany was outlined in a highly classified directive known as JCS 1067. Heavily influenced by the Morgenthau Plan, the directive was designed to ensure that Germany would never rise to threaten the world again. The plan was not just military disarmament, it was economic castration. The orders given to the American occupying forces were uncompromising. The military government was forbidden from taking any steps to rebuild the German economy or maintain the living conditions of the German people. Furthermore, a strict non-fraternization policy was enforced across the entire U.S. sector. American GIs were handed a pocket guide that explicitly outlined the rules. You will not speak to a German civilian unless it is official business. You will not shake their hands. You will not visit their homes. And most importantly, you will not share your food with them. The American soldier was expected to be a cold, indifferent enforcer of a hard peace. To break the fraternization ban meant risking a court-martial, heavy fines, and a reduction in rank. The High Command wanted the Germans to starve in the bed they had made. But the architects of JCS 1067, sitting in comfortable offices in Washington and London, had fundamentally misunderstood the psychology of the American GI. The soldiers of the U.S. Army were tough. They had fought their way through the meat grinder of the Hurtgen forest, survived the freezing hell of the Battle of the Bulge, and witnessed the unspeakable horrors of the concentration camps. They hated the Nazi regime with a burning passion. But they were also farm boys from Iowa, mechanics from Detroit, and clerks from Brooklyn. They were fathers, older brothers, and uncles. When these battle-hardened veterans drove their Sherman tanks and supply trucks into the ruined cities of Munich, Frankfurt, and Nuremberg, they were swarmed not by fanatical SS troops, but by packs of desperate, hollow-cheeked, shivering children. These children, many of them orphans dressed in rags, would stand by the sides of the roads, holding out their hands, begging for scraps. The American GI looked at the 6-year-old German girl freezing in the rubble, and his resolve broke. The idea of holding a starving child responsible for the crimes of Adolf Hitler was something the average American soldier simply could not stomach. And so, a quiet, massive, and highly illegal rebellion began across the American zone of occupation. It started with the rations. American soldiers were issued C rations and the legendary D-ration Hershey chocolate bars, dense, high-calorie blocks of chocolate designed for emergency energy. Within weeks of the occupation, GIs were systematically ignoring the fraternization ban to feed the youth of their former enemy. Veterans of the era described the overwhelming temptation. An American soldier would be sitting on the hood of his Jeep, eating a tin of peaches or a piece of bread, while 5 starving children stood 10 feet away, watching his every bite with desperate, starving eyes. The human instinct was too strong. Soldiers began tossing chocolate bars, packs of chewing gum, and excess mess hall food to the children. Military police were ordered to crack down on this behavior, but the officers on the ground often turned a blind eye. How do you court-martial a decorated combat veteran for giving a starving child a piece of bread? The children learned the English phrase, gum, chum, and chocolate. It became a systematic breakdown of the hard peace. The American soldier, trained to be a killer, spontaneously transformed into a humanitarian. But while the soldiers were breaking the rules on the streets, the man in charge of Bavaria was fighting a massive political battle at the top. General George S. Patton, the commander of the legendary Third Army, was appointed the military governor of Bavaria. Patton was the ultimate warrior, a profane, aggressive bulldog of a general who had killed more of the enemy than any other Allied commander. If anyone was expected to enthusiastically enforce the brutal starvation policies of JCS 1067, it was old blood and guts. Initially, Patton was strict. He believed the Germans needed to be thoroughly denazified and broken of their militarism. But as Patton actually toured the devastation of his sector, his perspective began to radically shift. Patton was a student of history, and he possessed a ruthless, pragmatic logic. He looked at the policies coming out of Washington, policies that demanded the destruction of German factories and the restriction of food imports. And he was disgusted. Patton realized something that the politicians in Washington had not yet grasped. You cannot build a peaceful democracy on a foundation of starving people. Patton's reaction to the begging children and the starving masses was not born out of soft-hearted pacifism. It was born out of cold, hard, strategic reality. He began writing furious letters to his wife and recording his frustrations in his diary. He argued that the Morgenthau Plan was an act of vengeance, not strategy. When confronted with the reality of millions of starving German civilians, Patton essentially told the Allied High Command that their policy was insane. He is widely noted as arguing the practical reality of the situation. If you do not let these people work, and if you do not feed them, they will starve. And if they starve, they will riot. You will have disease, you will have chaos, and worse, you will hand them straight over to the communists. Patton saw the Soviet Union as the true, looming threat. He knew that the Russians were waiting for the western zones of Germany to collapse into starvation and anarchy so that communism could sweep across the rest of Europe. Patton began dragging his feet on implementing the most punitive aspects of the economic destruction. He quietly allowed certain German industries to restart just so the population could have basic goods and work to buy food. He pushed back against the Supreme Allied Commander, Dwight D. Eisenhower, demanding that the people be allowed to rebuild their infrastructure to prevent a humanitarian catastrophe that would destabilize the entire continent. Patton's vocal opposition to the punitive occupation policies, his refusal to enact the harsh deindustrialization, and his controversial decisions regarding the use of former German officials to run the basic utilities ultimately cost him his job. Eisenhower relieved him of command of the Third Army in the fall of 1945. But history would prove the bulldog right. The fraternization ban was a spectacular failure. By the end of 1945, the U.S. military recognized that it was impossible to force American soldiers to watch children starve. The ban was lifted. The chocolate bar diplomacy, initiated by the rebellious, empathetic American GI, did more to denazify the next generation of Germans than any official propaganda campaign ever could. The German children who received that chocolate didn't grow up to hate the Americans. They grew up remembering the men in olive drab who fed them when their own leaders had led them to ruin. And General Patton's abrasive, pragmatic warnings eventually became official United States policy. Within 2 years of Patton's firing, the American government abandoned the punitive Morgenthau Plan entirely. They realized that Patton was right. A starving, destroyed Germany was a breeding ground for Soviet communism. This realization birthed the Marshall Plan, the massive American initiative to rebuild Europe, feed the hungry, and restart the German economy. The men of the American army went to Europe to destroy an evil empire, and they did exactly that. But their greatest legacy wasn't just in the cities they conquered or the tanks they destroyed. It was in the fact that when the guns stopped firing, the American soldier looked at the starving children of his bitterest enemy, put his rifle down, and reached for a Hershey bar. That simple act of defiant humanity, backed by the pragmatic foresight of generals who understood the true cost of vengeance, laid the foundation for the free world we live in today.